Hey, hi again, listeners. Big Al here. It's great chatting to you again in January as it is now, and yeah, pretty cool. Anyway, I was really sort of wondering what to talk about this week because I really want to talk about weavers, but sometimes it can be very tricky and maybe monotonous sometimes. But and then a few days ago, we were birding down the coast, just down the road from us, and we found this beautiful pair of grey-crowned cranes. Um, we heard this noise. We stood on the side and we heard this noise and looked down the bank, and there was this female making a lot of noise. And we're wondering and walking away on what the heck is going on here. We looked back, looked around there, and you know what we found? We found a nest. Oh my goodness! I'm telling you, I'm so stoked. There's a nest. From what we can see, there's two eggs in it, and so we're very chuffed about this having this pair, but we're really scared about not wanting to spook these birds. So we were thinking about raging and setting up a camera, but we'll see how it goes. But you know what? I think I am going to speak about the weavers and, of course, their nests. Well, let's begin with that one. Weaver or weaver birds, whatever you want to call them, they're a group um, of a lot of different families. I remember the last time we spoke, I spoke about passerines or passerines, whatever the way you want to say it. And anyway, they are actually from that family, and they are basically related to finches, believe it or not. Here in our area, we have 15 species, and most of the weavers are basically yellow in color or have yellow in their colors. But there a few do differ, like the chestnut weaver and the thick-billed weaver, the red-billed weaver, and a few others, and this sociable weaver. The red-billed buffalo weaver, in fact, has got a lot more black in it. So that's something a little different. The weavers get their name, and I think it's quite obvious, by the way they weave their nests, these intricate, beautiful nests. They weave green grass into their nests, and we'll basically discuss that just now. Mostly they live around about 10 to about 15 years. Some in captivity, or obviously they all last a bit longer, but normally 10 to 15 years. You know what? Let's talk about their nest now, as it's basically in my mind at the moment. Their nests are really extraordinary structures. The nests, they come in various shapes and sizes, but some of them are quite untidy, like the buffalo weaver, and you have these very incredibly woven nests, and we have these other extraordinary giant nests that they have of the social weavers, which house up to sometimes 500 weavers in one nest. That's absolutely amazing, and these birds are just incredible. But most of the individual nests are cylindrical in shape, with a downward facing narrow entrance that are usually situated next to water. And as I've said, the entrances do face downwards, and they make them as narrow as possible because they want to deter thieves and potential predators. Some of them have even very long tubes extending even further down from the nest, and well, from the nest body as such. These weavers mostly, once they've selected a good site for their nests, they start to loop, and they weave their strands of grass, or maybe strips of leaves around ends, or maybe one or two branches in a tree, and they normally create a loop first. Once they've created this loop for the nest body, then they start building this hollow body by weaving in and out of each other, and they finish that before they sort of add the tubular entrance, which done basically last. The males are the main builders of weavers. A little later I'll discuss a few of the weavers, and you'll see that some of the females do help, but mostly they leave the females the responsibility of selecting their breeding partner. They do this based on location, maybe design and comfort of the nest, which possibly will ensure them a good genetic quality. for the father of her offspring along maybe a safe home for her eggs. The males will build new green nests from, as I said before, fresh green grass, etc. And a lot of them, once they're finished, they'll make a lot of noise and flutter around and hang on the bottom of the nest to try and win over the lady. And I'll tell you, if this doesn't work, they'll start again. He'll break down the other one and he'll build up a new nest, and he'll try again and again and again. He doesn't always win the lady the first time. What a job. But I'm going to discuss now one of the few weavers that we do have locally. We have the Cape weaver, which is the male is, well, they're all basically about 17 centimeters in length, and they have, it's a fairly large weaver with a long pointed black bill, and it's got very pale eyes. The breeding male has a yellow underparts and head with like a sort of orangey brown face mask, and the bill is brown. The Cape weaver will build his nest and try and attract a female to it, as I said before. He hangs upside down from the nest, and flaps his wings like crazy, and he makes this like strange buzzing call. But before the female will accept the nest, she will test the quality. She'll try and pull it apart from the inside. But once she's accepted the nest, the male will then start building the entry tunnel, whilst the female aligns the inside with feathers, grass, and leaves. The other one we have is the golden weaver, very similar to the Cape weaver, also large, also about 17 centimeters in length. They've got a very heavy black bill, very pale yellow eyes as well, but they've got yellow underparts and heads onto the chest. So they're very, very, very yellow. Their nests are basically sort of kidney shaped, but they don't have an entry tunnel. They just have what we like to say, a veranda. They're normally built on the tip of branches or reeds, but always mostly hanging over water. The other we have is the lesser masked weaver. And his breeding colors, he has a black mask which extends to the center of his head, or the crown as we say, and his bill is black. His upper plumage and wings are basically yellow and black, with the rest of his body being yellow. The males will build the nest from like sort of green strips of reeds and grass, or even palm leaves. And once they've sort of finished, it's like a round woven structure. And he, of course, will also display around the nest to attract the female's attention. And of course, if she accepts the nest, she'll line the nest with soft grass, and the male will build a short entrance tunnel. So, there's are not really long tunnels, and they normally take about 9 to 14 hours to build these nests, let me tell you. And I can say on average, a lot of these weavers will do about 3 to 5 nests before a female will accept his nest, and then of course come and breed. They're only used once, and the lesser mast weavers ones are attached to very thin branches and also hang often, over water, etc., mostly to discourage any predators. So, that's one of the main reasons why they do it over water. The next one I want to talk about is the village weaver. It used to be called spotted back weavers, and these are the most common species of weaver in South Africa. And during the breeding seasons, mostly during the breeding seasons, there's only time you can really sort of, a lot of the time, sort of judge which is which. Because this specific one has a yellow forehead and a crown. He's got like a black mask that extends only to the front of his forehead. His nape and the back of his neck and his breasts are yellow, and he's got this heavily like blotched back. That's why they used to call it the spotted back weaver. And his eye is actually red, and the bill is black. Their nests are also suspended from hanging branches. They're normally around about 6 meters or so, or higher. They're very colonial, and they normally have a lot of nests in a tree, maybe 200 nests sometimes in a tree. And some have as many as 100 nests in a season. During their breeding, the male village weaver will do a little mating dance while hanging upside down to try and attract the female to his nest. And of course, when she accepts, then she'll come in and line the nest with feathers and grass and leaves. Then we have the southern masked weaver. He's very similar in appearance to the village weaver, but the village weaver is slightly larger. And during the breeding season, the southern masked weaver is distinguished from the village weaver by, he doesn't have this blotched back. And as I said, he is slightly smaller. And he's got more of a yellow forehead and crown. He's got a black mask, which extends only to his forehead. The nape and the back of the the back of the neck and breasts are also yellow. But his eyes are red, and his bills are black. The southernmost weaver will build its nest and try and attract a female to the nest, and very familiar to, or similar to, the other ones I spoke about. And of course, she's the same. If she accepts, she'll line the nest, and then they'll carry on with their normal lives. Now I'm going to also talk about the red-billed buffalo weaver. It's the largest weaver in South Africa. It's around about 23 centimeters. And the male has a really red bill and legs, but mostly just a black plumage everywhere. It's got shoulder patches, which are lightly flecked, with white. And there's also on the primary edges of its wings, they are flecked with a bit of white as well. The red buffalo weaver is different. It'll have a few females at once. Woo! They're very colonial, but a typical male, he'll make a nest with up to about 8 nest chambers and numerous females. So you know where that fits into in our lives. But anyway, it's very untidy, but it's normally built in the north or sort of northeast quadrant of any tree. So if you're down that side and you're looking for them, then that's where you'll find these nests. The man and his woman. The sociable weaver, on the other hand, is something totally different. They build large permanent nests for a whole community of birds. They're normally found around where there's stiff, dry grass, and they usually build around trees, etc. And some of the nests are actually built. In fact, they're the biggest or largest structures ever built by any birds. Is these nests from the social weavers. As I was saying just now, I got distracted a bit, but they're usually found, spread through branches of certain trees. They've also been known sort of to take advantage of telegraph poles and other sort of tall kind of man-made structures, and a lot of people believe this is what actually accounts for these birds moving out of their territories to other territories, as these telegraph poles. They stand out and they come and put their nests on there, and they move further down and further down. But anyway, they normally resemble a huge pile of like hay, and they have got entrance holes all placed beneath this huge pile of hay to stop nest invaders sort of coming and helping themselves. The other thing is they find themselves, because it's right at the bottom, they build a big, it actually helps them when it becomes very hot in the heat of the day. And, at night you get these brisk nighttime temperatures. So that's why they tend to sort of stay close to each other, because in that way, there's more heat. And it'll help them sort of raise their young to ride out extreme weathers, either evening and or in the night in relative comfort. But all the time they think they're fairly safe in numbers, because they're surrounded by most of their species, or all, and they use a sort of safety in numbers attitude. But it has been found that basically this safety in numbers doesn't, well, obviously it works because they're sort of carrying on with their breeding, but the mortality rate can be right up to about 80% of the young ones not making it to adulthood. Okay, I'm going to discuss some of the other weavers that we find locally. We've got the dark-backed weaver, which is mostly in the coastal and lowland evergreen forests. And it also has got like a woven nest which hangs from a thin violet twig. They're really pretty bird. They've got like a dark on their back and very yellow underneath. But they've got a beautiful call, and they are fantastic birds. round about where I live, there's lots of them around. We have the chestnut weaver, which is mostly found up in Namibia area in these dry type thornfelds or riverine type woodlands. And they have a more retort-shaped nest. The red-headed weaver, which we find mostly in the savannah, they're fairly common. And their nesting and courtship kind of lasts for a few days at a time. And while they're doing this, sometimes the female actually helps the male with the nest. So go red-headed weavers, why not get the lady to help? We have the thick-billed weaver, which I think is one of the most beautiful nests. They're mostly found in wetlands and rivers, during the breeding season, I'm talking about mostly. And they're built very, really compactly and tightly. And they're normally attached to about 2 bulrush reeds. And I've actually, this last weekend, that's what made me want to talk about weavers. I actually saw a lot of young ones out feeding, holding onto the reeds, and the male and female trying to feed them, and they're making a hell of a noise. And then there's the young ones are sticking their heads out of the nest. I've got some really, really good photographs, so I really, really enjoy the thick-billed weaver. We have the white-brown sparrow weaver, which is common to sort of semi-arid open acacia or maponi savanna. They've been known to sort of make their nests in suburban gardens as well, but they normally build them after rains, and they're kind of like really, really untidy. They're also retort-shaped nests. But listen to me, I've said there's a word retort-shaped a few times, but it's just me being clever. But the retort is basically a spherical shaped thing that they use for distillation. Distillation, of ingredients, etc. In the old times, like a spherical shape with this like extended down-facing tube, and that's where they get their name retort. So I just thought I'd be a little clever. But anyway, the other one is the scaly feathered weaver, which is also in dry acacia, thorn scrub, and it's mostly in the north as well. They make a little hollow ball of dry grass, and with a kind of spout-like side entrance, which is built. But mostly they do their building of these nests in these very aromatic pensia bushes, and we think possibly because of the smell and the and this actually keeps most of the parasites away. So it's one of those things that I like to add. So this is basically all I'm going to talk about at the moment about weavers. There's so much more to talk about, but I might touch on it again sometime later or refer to it a bit later. There are other weavers as well we have in Southern Africa, but they're a little bit further. There are not too many around, but the quick facts, just to give you a quick basic summary, the quick facts that we talk about is that male weavers, they tend to build a nest, but except for a few. And the weaver birds are the only birds recorded with the ability to tie knots. Isn't that amazing, eh? Absolutely amazing. The sociable weavers, as we mentioned earlier, their nests are the largest structures built by birds. And the one thing I can say is, when you're looking at these yellow birds or yellow weavers from a distance and you want to try to identify them, sometimes it will confuse you. But just look at the eye coloring. That will definitely help you with our identification of these birds. Okay, folks, I think that's me for now. And it's been lovely chatting to you again, and I look forward to bringing my next talk in 2 weeks' time. But if you feel you want me to talk about certain type of birds, please drop a line on the site and either on Facebook or one of the others, and then I can talk about those birds. So for now, from Big Al, cheers.